Hi everybody, welcome to Beyond the Lines. Time to do some Inktense pencil, watercolor, ink color work, right? Today I'm working in the Magical City and the page that I'm coloring is the Waterfall page here. And I'm working with Inktense pencils and a little bit of a white permanent marker and a white gel pen, and I'm gonna talk to you about how I create one focal point with a color and how I choose colors for the background to support that one tiny little bit of a focal point, in this case the red bridge. So enjoy and see what I do there. So let's get coloring. It's the Waterfall like you saw in the intro. And today I just want to play with colors. I didn't really feel like looking up a reference or something for this. There's enough other coloring pages in here where I will do so. But today I thought, well, I just want to play. I've been working with the references so much in the last video in the Outlander books, so today I'm just gonna be wild and I'm just going to color this however I feel like. There's of course water, stars, bubbles, but also mountains, houses, sky, and a bridge. And I kind of want the bridge to be a wonderful red, something, I don't know, maybe like the 500 here. That would be a nice color probably. So knowing that I will use blues for the sky and the waterfall here, probably grays and browns for the mountains, and then maybe a yellow ochre or something for the houses. The red would stand out. So I think what I want to show you today is how I make one little part stand out. So I'm going to start with the background, meaning the sky in this instance. And since it is so far away, I kind of like the 900 for that. It's a light blue. It's a light blue, and I could probably have a rather white-ish kind of a sky there in the background. So maybe have a little bit of a white space there as well. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring in a bit of that blue here on the bottom, just a bit. Maybe here as well. And I'm gonna pull it into the middle and upwards. That will likely make for a nice sky. I'm also going to put down a bit of that blue here. And also here on the other side. Pretty much just outlining the sky here. And then extending it to towards the ditch. Same here. I think it should go something like this. Sorry for the coughing. I've been recording another video beforehand, and lots of talking makes for a bit of coughing. So I'm going to go in right away with my water brush here. Sometimes I just put in all the pencil work and then liquefy all of that pigment all at once. But today I kind of want to see how vibrant my colors are and how much I might have to work on contrast and such. So I think it is definitely helpful here for me to go bit by bit and liquefy whatever pigment I just laid down with my pencils here. I could have very well also worked with the blocks, but I feel like pencils today. Sometimes it's just really a feeling when it comes to my preferences there. Not necessarily like a technical decision, quote unquote, where it's like, yeah, that surface is so tiny, I definitely want to go with the pencils and not with the blocks. Since I'm liquefying the pigment with the brush here anyways, I'm pretty much at liberty to use the blocks or the pencils anytime, and it doesn't really make a difference when it comes to the watercolor part or the watering down kind of part. I gotta go in there with the brush anyways, no matter what. But I don't know, sometimes it just feels natural to take the pencils and sometimes the blocks. It might be a thing where I think about, do I want to use the pure colors or do I want to mix my own? And I think for this one, I want to take the pure colors. So there's the sky. I want to get going with the rocks and the stones next. I want to have a little bit of a drying time here for the sky to go in for the houses and such. So for that, I will use green and brown for these hills here that have these lines in there. And I will use the 1540. It will stand in the background well enough when I go in with my red. And still in the back of my mind, I'm always thinking about, okay, the red has to stand out. So the 500 here will probably be the loudest color. So anything that is more on the muted side will stand back. Of course, that would be this green here. And the brown. Which one? I think the 1900 will do. Yeah, it will. Could be a little loud. Let's go for the 1730. It is even more laid back and muted. Also, it's a cool color. It will be pushed into the background. And then for these bigger bits here, I want the grays and the blacks. So the 2100. By the way, you don't have to remember all the pencils that I'm using here while I'm using them. If you want to use the same color combo on a project of yours, but I will have them all on the block. So in the description box below. I'm also taking the natural gray, by the way. In the description box below there is a link to my webpage, and there you can find close-up photos and the list of supplies I'm using, so you don't have to remember it all. Oh, there's a way there. Huh. Let's start with the, what's it called? Oak. The brown tone. And bring that in. Like this. Go around it with the green. And I'm leaving a few little bits uncolored. I will push the color there. Don't have to have every little bit of surface covered. But I will also go on top of some parts with my brown here just to change up the colors a bit. Give it a bit of depth. Going between the railing here of the bridge. And I'm putting down both tones, the brown and the green. Same for the other side. So I'm going a little more on the brown here. I will bring in the green too. On the brown. This one gets the green as well. And since I will liquefy this pigment, I don't have to be too careful with the way I put down my pencil here, in what direction I will put the lines. I'm going to swirl over all of this with my pencil anyway. Now for the grays and such. So let's see, I have the gray and black. I need to sharpen my black though. I think I don't want to color all the way to the edge, at least not here all the way, but I do want to do that up here in the ditch, where I do have my sky. I'm going around the bridge. I'm going to go over the bubbles though. Gonna bring the gel pen probably, or I don't know, permanent marker or something. Gonna bring that in. that would be the gray. Now I'm going in with the black. It's called charcoal gray, actually. I'm gonna darken some things up and just fill some areas. Like, for example, up here, there's going to be a little darker stone in between. And down here, there's also going to be a bit of a darker part. I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side, going in with the light gray. Same goes here with those stars. I will use gel pen on them. Going in with the black. Darkening things up towards the waterfall, where I want the stone to stand back even more, because I want the water to come over or in front of the waterfall here. Bringing in a bit of the charcoal gray also here. And now I can go in with my brushes and give that a whirl. I'm starting with the green and the brown. And then I will switch to the bigger brush and go for the stones. Not the rolling stones, but the waterfall stones. I'm not squeezing the brush, by the way, I'm just using the water that is flowing out of the brush anyway to liquefy my pigment. And I'm going in ovals or circles if I can, because that will make it look smoother. And I can break up those pencil lines that came from drawing in all of the color here. Since I wasn't particularly careful there, I have to be a little more careful while I liquefy my pigment and make sure that I break up those lines where I want them to be broken up, meaning I go in circles or ovals to not have this look too stripy in the end. So there would be green number 1. Let's start with the other side here too. That would be that. And some of the brown down here. I don't mind at this point that some of the green and brown bleeds into the bridge. I will be way more specific and careful with the way I color with the red in the end, so I can be a little more loose here on the background. Switching to the big brush, and I'm going on to have my cardstock behind. There we go. Going on to have that pigment here be liquefied. I'm almost dabbing in the color to have that stone look, where something is sometimes a little darker because there's cracks and all of that. And then I'm pulling the pigment towards the right and see how far I can go with filling this part of the page. So there's a little darker here. Be a little more careful around the swirls, but still I want to keep my stone texture, so I have to wiggle my brush a bit to keep the same look that I had here. And all of the colors that I've chosen so far stand back. The sky blue is pretty much the loudest color at this point, but there's so little of it on this page that those quiet colors do overtake the importance of the blue. And it will be even less important when there's the red and such in the page. I also don't mind that I did go over the water bits here and there. I can definitely take care of that later when I fill in those water swirls. And there's gonna be a little bit of gray in those swirls anyway. Because the water that is gonna come down is not gonna be turquoise blue. That scene here doesn't scream Caribbean Sea for me or tropical island or something. So I would actually go with maybe a little more of a grayish blue, kind of a water. So I can definitely remedy any weird looks there later. But first, it's time for the stones here. And if you feel that your page is too wet, maybe, you can definitely give it a blast with a blow dryer or a heat gun or something in between. I'm okay with working a little more wet. In my books, I'm not too particular with maybe some bleeding. It's fine at this point. Venice could be underwater, but there would be some more turquoise blues that I would use. Coming back to the water theme, but not this page in particular. So there we go. The main surroundings are in. Now I can decide, do I want to choose the water next? I think I do. I let it dry in between. I'm definitely gonna use the gray, the neutral gray that I also had used in the stones. Not the greenish bits here, but more like the purpley gray. That's the gray I'm using. I'm also going to use different shades of blue. I'm gonna take the 830. It's almost a purplish kind of a blue. It's called navy blue. I'm gonna take my favorite one, the 1100, the deep indigo. And I'm also going to use the 840. It's a little more of a warmer blue, an iron blue. And I might use a little bit of the charcoal gray down here where things get a little darker. But that's only the last resort. I'm not going to do that in the first go. And first go, I want to lay down the highlights first, so with the lightest color, and that would be here on top. And a little down. Then around it, I'm gonna go with the next darker tone, that would be the iron blue. Going to bring that in a little bit here on the sides, around the bridge. Pretty much all the way down. Gonna use that lighter blue here on these swirls for a minute. Is it the right one? Yes, it is. Gonna use them here on the swirls. And I'm gonna fill in a little bit, or I'm gonna base coat the rest with the iron blue. That is the next darkest that I used for other parts here of the waterfall, all of that midsection to be exact. Now I'm going to bring in the gray and the dark indigo. So first the gray, it will just have a few lines here, just a bit, not too much. But here on those swirls, there's going to be a bit of a gray. Also here, where the water goes in front of the stone. And then I can bring in the deep indigo, the darkest tone. And I can emphasize some of the patterns here that are coming with the page. So those swirls, for example. And it looks really, really horrible when you lay down that color with the pencil, because you don't have to be exact, and the color is so intense that you only need very little of the pencil here. And it looks really horrible while you are laying down the color. But trust me, or as you've seen with the stones, it's not gonna be too bad. So the really dark part is going to be here. All around this bit, it's gonna be really dark, and it will fade out into the medium and then the light blue. So the medium will just touch here. And then it will go into the light. And just like I did with the stones, I'm going to leave a little bit of white where I can pull color into towards the lower edge of this page. But I definitely need a bit of gray here too. This is a really dark bit. I think I will go in for the black, the charcoal gray, blackish tone here. A little more. And a little more of the iron blue. And the deep indigo, because I want a little darker here. And also here. Now, with this, I'm going to use both of my brushes. And I'm going to follow those patterns a bit more, especially here. But I'm going to start here on the top. With this light blue. And then I'm going to pull down this pigment and follow the direction of the lines. So I'm not going horizontal but vertical to keep the impression of a waterfall there. In between these bits. This is a darker swirl, so it will be followed. Like so. Going to do the same thing here with the swirl. I'm going swirl by swirl by swirl, have those down first, and then bring in the color of the rest here. So I want to make sure that they stand out a bit in all of this water. There's a swirl here. And moves on to here. There's another one. What you could also do if you wanted this whole picture have it look a little more busy, then I'm going to go for my picture here. You could go with different shades of blue next to each other in those swirls here. That would make it a lot more busy. But that is a rather simple way to busy things up, quote unquote. Coming in for this one here. And I'm always dabbing away the color on my paper towel next to me before I go to the next swirl, just to make sure that I don't cover up light blue with dark blue if I can help it. So here's the light blue, for example. Here's the dark blue. So they should stay next to each other and not necessarily cover each other up too much, you know. Going with the swirl. There's another one. And here I can pull the dark into the light a bit more. Another big swirl. And there's the dark part behind. And last little bit here. Where I pull things into each other. All right. Now I can go over the waterfall here and just take care of vertical lines to make the rest look very straight. Except for the swirls here on the left, but since I'm coloring right to left, I will take care of this part first. And have this little bit here colored. Like this. By the way, it's really windy outside. I hope that I can filter out the noise that the wind makes on my window and on my roof. If not, I'm sorry, it's just really, really one of those windy winter days here. We had quite a bit of winter storm and winter winds this year, and since I'm filming this in January, though I know this video will only come out in March, I'm actually still in winter mode. No spring around here yet. Okay. There we go. Now I can switch to my bigger brush because I want to have the same kind of a flowy feel on the water here that I also got with the stones. So I'm going to start from the darkest spot and follow those lines, liquefying my pigment here. This is way easier to do with such a wide, big brush instead of the smaller one that I used before. You could definitely do that with this kind of a brush as well. You will just maybe have to work a little more to not have those lines be visible here. Or you maybe want to play up the fact that there are lines, then I could also see this working very well with a smaller brush. So there we go, but I want to have kind of a flowy bit here, so I'm just going with the lines and extending them here. There we go. Now, while I let this dry, I can move on to my houses, and they do have chimneys. So I don't want this to be super dark, but I'm gonna take the neutral gray that I used in the water and in the stones to color those chimney smoke swirls. But I'm leaving a lot of white space because I actually just want to, I don't want this to look like industrial age, kind of a, I don't know, British coal mine landscape there. I want this to be a little more subtle, and I'm going to move on to the yellows. So the yellow ochre in this case, this one here, this is what I'm choosing for the houses. It's called amber. And I'm just going to put that down on the lower part of the houses. And I'm not necessarily taking care of having stained glass windows or whatever, just having the houses here. Then I will bring in the black for the chimneys here. And then a very dark reddish tone for, actually I don't really want a reddish tone for the roofs, but I need something colorful-ish. Ooh, I like this one, the maroon chocolate brown. It has a red in there, a reddish tint, but it is dark enough so that it's not actually pushed in through the foreground, because again, I want the bridge to be the foreground. So I'm taking the chocolate here to color the roofs. It should actually help a lot to push things back. And I'm going to take my smaller brush and I'm gonna go in from light to dark. So I'm starting with my amber. Going here to liquefy my pencils. Doing the same here on that tower. This house, and they're so far in the background that I don't really care about details much. I will shade though a bit once this layer is dry. But first the roof. It is really pushing, it is intense enough, this chocolate brown here, to make a difference and to really make the roof look like roofs. It is red enough in its tint, but it is also neutral enough that it is pushed into the background automatically. It's a loud color if you have it as your main focal point color, but it will fade so much in comparison to the red that I'm going to use for the bridge. So it's a nice little thing there. Using the black for the chimneys. And then I can turn my page because I find that a little more comfortable. And I always say be comfortable when you color or draw or paint or do anything creative. Be comfortable in the way you hold your hands, otherwise you will have cramps like crazy, and that is not really a nice thing to have. So I'm coloring the smoke now, pulling my pigment as much as I can, but also keeping some parts really very light. And you can see that I'm using very little of the pencils only. They will stay with you for a long time, even if you color quite a bit with them. And if you use the blocks, they will stay with you even longer. It's, you can really cover quite a lot of paper with just a tiny little bit of the pigment. So there we go. Now I will give this a blast, and then I will shade my houses just the tiniest bit before I go in with my bridge here. Okay, this is dry. I'm going to use colors that I already used to hype up contrast a tiny little bit. While I blow dried my page, I did look at the page and saw what I wanted to add. So I'm using the same brown that I used for the path there. Going to use that to shade my houses a bit, only on the lower part. Then I'm going to use a bit of that black or charcoal gray here on this path, just a bit. And also just a bit maybe on the houses. Just a little bit here where the chimneys meet the roof. But very little only, not much at all. And I'm going to start with my dark brown here, my oak brown, liquefying this, giving my houses a bit more interest and dimension. And it's so little that you have to do to make this look a little more sophisticated, a little more interesting, a little more contrasty and colorful and, well, dimensional, whimsical, all the good words. So here's a little bit of a black. Also here. And then here on this path, there's a little bit. Now the important part, the bridge. All of this now is really in the background. You can see it's very flat looking. It's flat. All the colors are very harmonic. Nothing really stands out. Even the blue sky doesn't stand out as much anymore because I have a lot of blues here in my waterfall. And also with the bluish gray, the tint of the stone is bluish. Now, to make the bridge stand out, it really has to pop. And I'm definitely going to use the 500, which is called Chili Red. I think this is going to pop. But I need a shading color too. And I could go for that brown here, yes, but I don't really want to at this point. I might have to use it later on if I can't get some things dark enough, but I'm actually wanting to use the 600, which is called, where is it? Here it is, Shiraz, which is a very dark red, lovely wine. And I want to use this for the shading. So I'm going to sharpened both my pencils. Also, I had said earlier that I have to be a little more careful now with the focal point and not having things bleed. So I am going to be more careful while I give my bridge a layer of the red on the parts that are towards me. So you can see I'm leaving a little bit of white there. This is where the Shiraz will go. And I'm going to blend the chili and the Shiraz together then. Here on the thing, on the underbelly of the bridge, you can see I have a little bit of the chili color there. And I'm going to use both colors on that bit, the Shiraz and the chili. So I'm going to bring in the chili here. And I'm going to layer the Shiraz on top. And you see I'm not leaving any white space, covering the bridge with red completely. Because I want this to be really saturated. I don't want to pull pigment into other parts. I want this to be the focal point, the solidly colored bridge. Now I can go very slowly, very carefully with my brush, with a smaller one, go in and liquefy the pigment. And I'm just really very slowly, no rush, going to stay within the lines as much as possible. And I'm going to start with the railing. And I just saw something. There is actually, this is red as well. The Shiraz red. So is this part. I'm going to start with my light red railing here. I had thought this was, that these two parts were mountainside, but they were actually part of the railing. So you can layer things with the Inktense and repair, which is really great. I'm just going slowly, making sure that I stay within the lines as much as possible, that I leave as much pigment on the paper as possible, that I don't blot away too much. Because again, I want this bridge to stand out. This is the focal point. The light part is done. Now I'm going into the darker Shiraz parts here of the railings, still going only on these bits here, not regarding the underbelly part of the bridge yet. That will be the last thing that I'm going to take care of here. I think this Shiraz makes for a nice contrast color, and it kind of sits in between the chili red and that brown, that dark chocolate brown color that I used for the roof. I think that's a nice way to have somewhat of a color repetition. And now I'm going on to the belly part. I'm starting with the light chili red part that I painted. Liquefying that pigment first and then pulling the Shiraz into the chili. Why I'm doing that is I want to make sure that there's chili red there. If I would liquefy the Shiraz first, since this color is so intense, all of the colors, I would probably cover up the chili red, or it would be very likely that you would hardly see any chili red. And I want the chili red to be there because there's some reflection and highlights and things going on. So I need a little bit of a lighter tone here on that part. Now, the bridge is colored. What I would do now is actually work on those white stars and bubbles and such to have why do I have 2 gel pens in there? Ah, that's the new one. I haven't used that. I'm looking for... There it is. My white paint pen for those bubbles. Let's get the white pen started. Here we go. And I'm only gonna go in for the medium and the large bubbles now. I hope that sometimes this pen leaks pigment-free ink, and I don't like that. So here we go. Making sure that there's a lot of white pigment there. I'm just dabbing that in, going from the left, from the right to the left again. All those very tiny, small bubbles in there, and also the stars, I'm going to take care of those with the gel pens. You could also do this with only gel pens or with gouache. Makes for Nice contrast as well. Or a Posca pen or something. Any permanent marker or permanent opaque color that goes on top of other things is totally suitable for this. There we go. Gonna move on to the gel pen now. Gonna activate it on my cardstock. There we go. And I'm just gonna color in those smaller bits and also the stars. Going to go on top of the gel pen with my white pen here just to cover up those lines. Don't want the star to look scratchy in the middle. Another star here. Now I'm going to turn my page not to smudge my whites here. I'm going to fill in the remaining little dots and bits here. Yeah, there, this one smudges, so I have to repair that one bubble in a minute. Sometimes the gel pen doesn't want to pool very well.
Just have to make it. There we go. And with my bigger pen here, I'm going to dab a bit more in the center so that we have less scratchy looking stars. A little more here on these tiny bubbles. And I'm going to have to repair this one here. Now it is pooling white. It did misbehave earlier, so I'm just going to go over some of the bits here. Bring in a little more of my white permanent marker to have these big bubbles stand out. That's more like it. Did I get them all? I think I did. So I'm going to keep my book open for a while now to let this dry. And that pretty much is the coloring page for today. I hope you enjoyed watching along. This is how I like to work when it comes to colors, when I want something to stand out and something to be loud and the rest be rather quiet in my picture. I hope you enjoyed. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. I'm gonna have the list of supplies and such up on the blog by now, so you can hop on over to my webpage and take a look. There will also be close-up photos, so feel free. And next week I'm not gonna be back with the Outlander coloring book, but with a different coloring book in between. One of my subscribers has asked me if I could help with the Sherlock coloring book with the portraits there, so I'm going to have the Sherlock coloring book on next before I go back to Outlander and then focus on the next color. So join me next week. Have fun, take good care, have a beautiful day, do some coloring. If you happen to color this page and you want to send it to me, let me know what you're working with, what you decided to use as supplies, as colors, as tones. You can tag me on either Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, and you could also DM it to me on all of those platforms in case you don't want this to be public. But I would love to see your work. And thank you again for watching. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you're new and you want to see more. And I hope you have a great day. Thanks. Bye.